Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. President Trump signaled Monday he will not support a 1 or 2 week spending bill to avoid a government shutdown over the holidays, as the White House continues to demand at least $5 billion to expand the wall on the U.S.-Mexico border. Democrats have offered about a quarter of that amount. With Christmas approaching, more than 380,000 federal employees face the prospect of unpaid furloughs, while a further 420,000 so-called essential federal workers could be required to work without pay. David Cox, president of the American Federation of Government Employees, said, quote, "Congress and the president should not hold agency funding hostage to controversial policies unrelated to the budget. Our members are asking how they're supposed to pay for rent, food, and gas if they're required to work without a paycheck. The holiday season makes these inquiries especially heart-wrenching," unquote. In Yemen, a UN-brokered ceasefire agreement appeared to be holding early Tuesday after a Saudi-led coalition fought pitched battles with Houthi rebels in the strategic port city of Hodeidah for a few hours after the truce was due to take effect at midnight. The fragile ceasefire comes as the UN warns tens of thousands of Yemenis are enduring famine conditions, while half of Yemen's 28 million people are on the brink of starvation. Last week, the Senate voted 56-41 to end U.S. support for the war in Yemen, but a similar bill in the House is not expected to pass this year. The Trump administration's barring the Yemeni mother of a 2-year-old boy with a rare brain disease from visiting her dying son in California one last time. Doctors have put Abdullah Hassan on life support and say the boy will not survive much longer. Abdullah and his father, Ali Hassan, are both U.S. citizens, but the boy's mother, Shaima Swileh, is a Yemeni citizen who now lives in Egypt. Under the Trump administration's travel ban, which was upheld by the Supreme Court in June, people from 5 majority Muslim countries, Iran, Libya, Yemen, Syria, and Somalia, are barred from entering the United States. The family is seeking a waiver for Swileh so she can visit her son in a hospital in Stockton, California. Ali Hassan told the San Francisco Chronicle, quote, "All she wishes is to hold his hand for the last time." A federal judge is set to sentence former Trump National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, who's pleaded guilty to lying to the FBI about conversations he had with Russia's ambassador to the U.S. before Trump took office. In a sentencing memo filed earlier this month, Special Counsel Robert Mueller said he's not seeking jail time for Flynn, citing his substantial assistance with the probe into Russian interference in the 2016 election and at least one other investigation. On Monday, the FBI arrested 2 of Flynn's former business associates and charged them with illegally influencing U.S. lawmakers on behalf of the Turkish government. Prosecutors say they failed to register as foreign agents and lied to the FBI about their efforts to have the Turkish cleric, Fethullah Gulen, extradited to Turkey from his home in the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania. The Senate Intelligence Committee says social media companies, including Google, Facebook, and Twitter, misrepresented the degree to which Russian trolls sought to spread fake news and sow discord ahead of the 2016 election. A pair of bipartisan reports published by the committee Monday claim Russia's government targeted African Americans in particular in an effort to suppress the turnout of voters likely to cast ballots for Hillary Clinton. The reports came as the NAACP says it'll begin a 1-week digital protest starting today, organized under the hashtag #LogOutFacebook. The civil rights groups say Facebook has a history of data breaches that unfairly target users of color. It also says Facebook lacks diversity among its executives. In Nicaragua, press freedom groups have condemned the government of President Daniel Ortega after police raided the office of a journalist and government critic last Thursday, breaking open locks before seizing equipment. The raid came as Nicaraguan police also seized the headquarters of a prominent human rights group and after lawmakers outlawed 9 NGOs critical of Ortega's government. This is Carlos Fernando Chamorro, a prominent TV news host and editor of the digital newspaper Confidencial.
The objective is to silence us. The idea is they want to snuff out ideas. They want to shut up and to shut down a media outlet, but they won't succeed. We're going to continue to inform the public. We're going to continue denouncing the investigation, the abuses of the Daniel Ortega dictatorship.
In Palestine, the United Nations is appealing for $350 million in emergency humanitarian relief after the Trump administration cut funding to UNRWA, the UN relief agency for Palestinians. The UN says the funds are urgently needed for 1.4 million Palestinians, most in need of food, shelter, health care, clean water and sanitation. The appeal came as the Australian Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, formally recognized Jerusalem as the undivided capital of Israel, even though Israel has illegally occupied East Jerusalem since 1967.
It now recognises West Jerusalem being the seat of the Knesset and many of the institutions of government is the capital of Israel. West Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And we look forward to moving our embassy to West Jerusalem when practical in support of and after final status determination.
In May, the Trump administration drew international condemnation when it moved the U.S. embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, a city that Palestinians want as part of a future state. At the United Nations General Assembly, the U.S. voted Monday against a framework agreement aimed at protecting the rights of refugees around the world. The vote on the Global Compact on Refugees was 181-2, with only the far-right government of Hungary joining the Trump administration in rejecting the refugee pact. Among other things, the compact seeks to find alternatives to jailing asylum seekers, especially children. The Trump administration is currently detaining about 15,000 immigrant children in government custody. In Hungary, thousands of protesters took to the streets for a fifth straight day Monday in opposition to far-right authoritarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. The protests were sparked after Orban's government created a new court system controlled by his party. Protesters are also furious over new rules that allow employers to demand their employees work up to 400 hours of overtime and giving employers up to 3 years to pay for the extra work. Critics have called the rules slave laws. This is Andy, a 26-year-old student in Budapest.
I think that discontent is growing, and with this not only anger and frustration, but also those voices which would like to make change. I think this is a process where we are trying to come up with new ideas.
Monday's protests targeted state-run TV and radio stations over their one-sided support for Prime Minister Orban. Guards ejected 2 independent lawmakers from Hungary's state television building after they demanded the broadcaster read out a petition from the protesters. Back in the United States, the Trump administration's rolling back a federal surveillance program known as Quiet Skies, but U.S. air marshals will continue to track airline passengers who they deem suspicious. In July, the Boston Globe revealed the existence of the domestic surveillance program run by the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, which has been shadowing U.S. citizens on planes and in airports since 2012. Under the Quiet Skies program, federal air marshals collect information about U.S. travelers' common behaviors, like using the bathroom repeatedly, sleeping on flights, or sweating heavily. Under changes announced Monday, air marshals will continue to profile passengers, but will no longer report many of their observations to other intelligence agencies. CBS said Monday it'll withhold all of a $120 million severance package for Les Moonves, former chair of the media giant. Moonves resigned in September after The New Yorker magazine published an article detailing a slew of previously unreported sexual assault and harassment allegations. His resignation came as the longtime executive producer of CBS's 60 Minutes, Jeff Fager, was fired for bullying and sexually harassing women employees, and less than a year after CBS's star anchor Charlie Rose was also ousted after being accused of sexual assault and harassment. Attorneys general from 45 states are asking Pennsylvania prosecutors for information about sexual misconduct by Catholic priests, as well as efforts by the church hierarchy to cover up the abuses. This comes as Jesuit provinces in Maryland and the Midwest released the names of 84 clergy members who are credibly accused of sexually abusing children. The latest lists bring the number of Jesuits accused of sexual crimes since the 1950s to 230. In West Virginia, a high school administrator is under fire for allegedly bullying a transgender student who used the boys' bathroom. 15-year-old sophomore Michael Critchfield, who identifies as male, says he was cornered in an otherwise empty boys' bathroom at Liberty High School by assistant principal Lee Livingood, who challenged him to use a urinal to prove he's a boy, before saying, quote, "Not gonna lie, you freak me out," he said. The superintendent of Harrison County Schools has said Livingood acted inappropriately and was insensitive during the encounter. The ACLU warns that over half of trans male teens attempt suicide during their teenage years. In Missouri, a judge has ordered a serial poacher who illegally shot and killed hundreds of deer to watch the Walt Disney film Bambi at least once a month over the course of a year prison term. Authorities say over a 3-year period, David Berry Jr. left hundreds of bodies to rot after beheading the deer for hunting trophies. And in Canada, Indigenous activists who've been physically blocking the construction of the largest fracking project in Canadian history are bracing for a police raid on their encampment. Members of the Unistoten clan stopped TransCanada Corporation workers from entering their territory November 20th to work on the planned $4.7 billion Coastal GasLink pipeline, but a judge has ruled TransCanada can begin construction on First Nations land. The fight has drawn supporters from both the U.S. and Canada. In Seattle, Washington, Friday, about 60 protesters laid a 50-foot-long pipeline through the executive lobby of J.P. Morgan Chase's Pacific Northwest headquarters and created a mock oil spill in a protest against the bank's financing of TransCanada and other pipeline companies. This is Rachel Heaton, a Muckleshoot tribal member who joined the protest.
This is about our future generations, and that's why I have my 5.5-month-old boy out here, is because ultimately the decisions that these banks are making, that we're making, all have to do with their future. And, you know, the idea of them not having clean air to breathe or clean water is, it's such a horrible thing to think about, but the fact that it just doesn't bother some people, and so we have to come out here and talk about this. And so really this fight isn't just about attacking the issue of pipelines, but it's also about what are we doing for our future generations.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman.
And I'm Juan Gonzalez. Welcome to all of our listeners and viewers around the country and around the world.